Everyone remembers the ending of Loki Season 2 as a victory. Loki didn't conquer anything. He didn't rule through fear. He didn't dominate the multiverse. Instead, he sacrificed himself. He took on the burden of infinite timelines so that everyone else could have free will. And emotionally, that ending worked. It felt earned. It felt poetic. It felt like the perfect conclusion to a character who had spent his entire life trying to escape being controlled. But here's the uncomfortable truth Marvel hasn't said out loud yet. Loki's solution only works if you ignore how the multiverse actually functions. And Doctor Doom is the one character who refuses to ignore it. This is where most theories go wrong. They frame Doom as a villain reacting to Loki, or worse, as a Tony Stark variant angry about the past. That misses the real conflict entirely. Doom isn't responding emotionally to Loki's choice, he's responding logically. Because from Doom's perspective, Loki didn't save reality. He turned it into a system with a single, catastrophic point of failure: the flaw in Loki's freedom. At the end of Loki Season 2, Loki becomes something unprecedented, a living engine sustaining the multiverse. The timelines don't just exist anymore. They are being actively held together by a conscious being. The branches grow because Loki allows them to grow. They survive because he endures the strain. Visually, it's framed as myth, a god holding together the strands of reality like Yggdrasil itself. Functionally, it's something else entirely. It's infrastructure. And that's the problem. In engineering, in physics, in systems theory, any structure that relies on one entity, one mind, one will, one consciousness, is considered unstable by default. Not because that entity is evil, not because they'll betray the system, but because failure becomes inevitable. Loki doesn't need to turn evil for the multiverse to collapse. He only needs to hesitate, to weaken, to doubt, or to die. And if that happens, everything ends at once. This is the part the story doesn't celebrate, but Doom immediately recognizes. From Doom's perspective, Loki hasn't created freedom. He's created a reality that only survives as long as one god keeps believing in the story. That isn't liberation, that's a countdown. Doom's ideology was always the opposite of Loki's. To understand why Doom reacts the way he does, you have to understand one core principle of his character that never changes across universes, adaptations, or interpretations. Dr. Doom refuses to serve. He doesn't serve kings. He doesn't serve gods. He doesn't serve fate, prophecy, or cosmic narrative. And he especially doesn't serve chance. Where Loki believes meaning comes from choice and story, Doom believes meaning comes from structure, law, design, systems that don't rely on faith or emotion to function. This is why Doom is the ideological successor to He Who Remains, even though he despises everything Kang represented. He Who Remains controlled the timeline externally through pruning and force. Loki rejected that system because it erased choice. Doom rejects Loki's system for the opposite reason, because it's unsustainable. To Doom, the idea that reality should exist because a god holds on is unacceptable, not immoral, inefficient. Reality should not be a story being told. It should be a machine that runs whether anyone believes in it or not. That's the war Marvel is setting up. Not hero versus villain, freedom versus order. Why Doom sees Loki as a security flaw. There's a reason leaks and early discussion keep circling one specific idea. Doom discovering that the multiverse is no longer natural. It's being maintained. Once Doom realizes that the timelines aren't self-sustaining, that they depend on Loki's continued existence, the conclusion becomes obvious to him. This isn't a universe. It's a fragile ecosystem balanced on a single nerve. And Doom doesn't see that as beautiful. He sees it as irresponsible. From his perspective, Loki has replaced one tyrant with a worse system. At least the TVA was distributed. At least pruning was scalable. Loki's solution concentrates the fate of everything into one throne at the end of time. If Doom is going to save reality, that throne has to go. Not because Loki is evil, but because no god should be load-bearing. Why this isn't about ruling the multiverse. Here's the critical mistake most people make. They assume Doom wants to replace Loki. He doesn't. Doom doesn't want to sit on the throne at the end of time. He doesn't want to be the god of stories. He doesn't want to hold the branches together himself. What Doom wants is something far more radical. He wants to end the multiverse entirely, not by destroying everything, but by collapsing it back into one stable, self-contained timeline, the sacred timeline. Not because it was perfect, not because it was moral, but because it worked. One universe means no incursions, no multiversal cancer, no realities colliding and annihilating each other. Choice is meaningless if existence itself can't be guaranteed. And that's the line Loki crossed without realizing it. He saved freedom, but he made survival optional. The war was never Loki versus Doom. This is the reframe Marvel is quietly building toward. The conflict isn't about who deserves power, it's about whether reality should be free or stable. Loki chose freedom, believing people would find a way. Doom chooses stability, believing people won't and shouldn't have to. And once you see it that way, Doom stops looking like a conqueror. He starts looking like a man doing the same job the TVA once did, just without pretending it was noble. The timestamps prove Doom was inevitable. Marvel didn't hide the truth about what went wrong with the multiverse. They timestamped it. When the Russo brothers posted, "These are not teasers, they are clues," most people assumed it was marketing hype. But once fans started lining up the countdown clocks from the 2026 teasers with exact moments from Avengers Endgame, a much more unsettling picture emerged. Because those timestamps don't point to Doom's arrival. They point to the moment reality became unstable, and every single one traces back to the same event. The Avengers breaking time, the first crack, 1:24:20. The Ancient One was right. One of the teaser clocks stops at 1:24:20. That exact timestamp in Endgame is when the Ancient One warns Bruce Banner about the danger of removing Infinity Stones from their timelines. She doesn't talk about villains. She doesn't talk about conquest. She talks about structure. She explains that removing a stone creates a blackened, branched reality, a timeline that becomes unstable, vulnerable, and eventually collapses. What matters here isn't the stone itself. It's the principle. Timelines aren't meant to branch infinitely. They decay. The Ancient One wasn't describing a hypothetical risk. She was describing a law of reality, one the Avengers chose to violate anyway. And Loki's solution in Season 2 doesn't undo that damage. It just allows the damage to continue indefinitely. From Doom's perspective, this is the original sin of the modern MCU. The moment reality stopped being self-correcting and became something that required constant intervention to survive. That's not freedom, that's life support. The second crack, 1:17:20. Loki breaks the system. Another teaser clock aligns perfectly with 1:17:20. That's the moment Loki steals the Tesseract during the 2012 Battle of New York. This isn't symbolic, it's mechanical. That single act creates the chain reaction that leads to the TVA, He Who Remains, and eventually Loki becoming the god of stories. It's the moment the sacred timeline stops being sacred. And here's the key detail most people miss. That moment only exists because of the Avengers time heist. If they hadn't interfered, Loki wouldn't have escaped. If Loki hadn't escaped, the TVA wouldn't have been exposed. If the TVA hadn't fallen, the multiverse wouldn't be branching uncontrollably. From Doom's perspective, this isn't tragic. It's negligent. The Avengers didn't just save half the universe. They destabilized all of reality and then walked away. Why Doom uses clocks, not prophecies? There's a reason Doom's presence is being teased through countdowns and timestamps instead of visions or myths. Doom doesn't believe in destiny, he believes in deadlines. When he looks at the multiverse, he doesn't see stories branching beautifully outward. He sees exponential decay, resource exhaustion, systems pushed beyond tolerance. The kind of failure that doesn't announce itself until it's irreversible. That's why Doom doesn't show up screaming about gods. He shows up with math. If the Avengers created the fracture, if Loki allowed it to grow, then Doom becomes inevitable. Not as a villain, as a response. The Avengers didn't cause Doom, they summoned him. This is the final piece most people resist. Dr. Doom isn't appearing because the multiverse exists. He's appearing because the multiverse cannot continue. Every teaser clock, every timestamp, every callback to Endgame is Marvel quietly admitting that the current system doesn't work. That infinite choice comes with infinite collapse. The Avengers broke time to save the universe. Loki broke the rules to save choice. Doom arrives to save existence itself. And unlike everyone else in this saga, he's the only one asking the question no hero wants to answer. What if freedom is the problem? The evidence everyone skipped, and why Doom acts before it's too late. Because once you stop looking at Doom as a sudden threat and start looking at him as a response to systemic failure, certain moments in the MCU take on a very different meaning. Moments that were never framed as Doom-related at all. They were framed as warnings. The Ultron vision wasn't wrong, it was incomplete. In Avengers, Age of Ultron, Tony Stark experiences a vision that haunts him for the rest of his life. The Avengers lie dead, Earth is broken, humanity has lost. Most people interpret that vision as Ultron's failure, a nightmare scenario that Tony narrowly avoided. But here's the uncomfortable question Doom would ask. What if Ultron was right about the outcome, just wrong about the method? Ultron believed peace required control. He failed because he lacked restraint, nuance, and long-term structure. He wanted immediate results. Doom doesn't. Doom wants permanence. There's an even deeper cut most people gloss over. In Thor, during Thor's cave vision sequence, we briefly see hooded figures standing in the shadows. At the time, they were dismissed as vague foreshadowing, but recent theories suggest something far more deliberate. Those figures don't move like mystics. They don't behave like gods. They stand like observers. The emerging theory isn't that these were sorcerers or cosmic entities, but Doombots, machines from a future Doom, ensuring Tony Stark experiences enough trauma to push him toward armor obsession, paranoia, and eventually the technological arms race that makes Doom's own existence possible. This doesn't make Doom a variant of Tony. It makes Doom the endpoint Tony was always circling. Ultron was the prototype. Doom is the final iteration. Where Tony panicked and overcorrected, Doom calculated and waited. Latveria isn't a nation, it's a lifeboat. Recent teasers show Latveria as something strange, too perfect, too clean, almost frozen in time. A 1950s-style utopia untouched by modern decay. Most viewers see an aesthetic choice. Doom sees insurance. The leading theory gaining traction isn't that Latveria is nostalgic. It's shielded, locked in a literal 24-hour temporal loop. Every day resets. Every incursion is undone locally. Even if the wider universe collapses, Latveria survives. This reframes Doom's entire philosophy. He isn't trying to rule the world. He's trying to outlast it. If reality is collapsing due to infinite branching, then the only rational response is containment, isolation, stability at all costs. Latveria becomes proof of concept, a controlled environment immune to the chaos Loki allowed to grow unchecked. Doom isn't hoarding power, he's preserving continuity. And unlike Loki's tree, Latveria doesn't depend on belief, sacrifice, or emotional endurance. It runs whether Doom is present or not. That's the difference. The Reed Richards problem no one wants to address. This is where the story becomes truly uncomfortable. Because if Doom is responding to collapse, someone still has to cause it. And the most likely candidate isn't a god, it's Reed Richards. Reed is brilliant, compassionate, obsessed with solving problems no one else can. And historically, that combination has always been dangerous, especially when family's involved. The emerging pivot theory suggests Reed doesn't cause the first incursion out of arrogance or ambition, but desperation, trying to save his family, trying to fix something that shouldn't be fixed, and accidentally tearing reality in the process. From Doom's perspective, this is unforgivable, not because Reed is smarter, but because Reed acts without accepting consequences. This flips their rivalry completely. Doom isn't jealous of Reed's intelligence. He's disgusted by Reed's recklessness. Where Reed believes problems can always be solved later, Doom believes some mistakes must be prevented before they happen. That's why Doom acts early. That's why he doesn't wait for consensus. And that's why he's willing to do what heroes refuse to do: clean up the mess. Why Doom moves before the collapse is visible. Heroes respond to disasters. Doom prevents them. That's the defining difference. By the time incursions become obvious, it's already too late. Loki's tree can slow decay, but it can't reverse it. Reed can analyze the problem, but not undo it. The Avengers can fight symptoms, but not structure. Doom understands this. That's why he doesn't announce himself as a conqueror. That's why he doesn't plead his case. That's why he doesn't wait for permission. He moves because the math says time is running out. The uncomfortable conclusion. By the end of this, the question stops being, is Doom right? And becomes, is anyone else even willing to try? Loki saved choice. The Avengers saved their world. Reed tries to save his family. Doom is the only one trying to save reality itself. And that's why he doesn't hesitate. The MCU's next war isn't about power. It's about whether existence should be free or whether it should be allowed to continue at all. And Doctor Doom is the only one brave enough to answer that question honestly.